Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Rias, Akeno and Rossweisse. Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. The next day, Irina was waiting for Michael to call all of the angels so that he could reveal what it was that he had discovered. Homeroom class was starting and all Irina could think about was Issei. Her thoughts lingered on how she wanted to be with him. How she wanted to have a future and family with him. How she wanted him all to herself. Still, she understood and respected how Issei loved Rias and Asia. Being an angel, she couldn't openly do the seductive and ecchi acts that the other girls could do. If she crossed a certain line, she would fall and her dreams and spirit would shatter. When she thought about it thoroughly though, she didn't actually mind falling if it was for Issei. Yet, her faith and her father's pride also came to mind when she thought about falling. Her mind became conflicted and she could tell that her wings were flickering between black and white. She had to stop herself before she really did fall. Secretly, she had not so innocent fantasies of him. It was happening recently and more frequently. It all really started a few weeks before. Irina couldn't remember what was going on, but all she could recall was a bright flash of rainbow light. Specifically, she could remember seeing a pink light, and that was it. When lunch came, Issei walked over to her, with lunch in hand. Zenobia was having lunch with the student council, since they were still in the midst of getting ready to take up office. Asia was. "Hey, Irina, want to go have lunch together?" Issei suggested. Irina began running hundreds of simulations in her mind. Many were of sensual natures. Does he want to do something with me? Does he want to eat me? Trying to stay rated T, but I'm still confused about whether this story is rated T or not. I'm not going to put anything explicit on here though. Irina didn't finish her thought as she snapped back to reality. Irina merely nodded as she felt embarrassed by her lewd thoughts of him. Issei was in anticipation and fear. He had still yet to see the whole of Irina's personality change. The other girls were already exhibiting their new personalities very often now, especially Rossweisse, but Issei felt that Irina wasn't letting much on though, as if she were subconsciously holding herself back. Issei knew that he needed to talk to Azazel again. He still didn't know enough about what the personality ray was doing to the girls, and he wasn't taking chances to wait if something bad was going on. The crying that he saw Zenobia go through was enough to warrant him to knock on Grigori's door. Eating outside, Issei and Irina were actually silent throughout most of the lunch period until Irina broke the silence. "Hey, Issei-kun, what happened with Zenobia yesterday?" Irina's tone was curious and Issei responded with a nervous look. "What do you mean?" Issei was a bit hesitant to mention the kiss that he used to comfort Zenobia the previous night. He couldn't mention because he'd have upset girls looking him in the face. "We just talked and I said some stuff to her because she was feeling down." Issei gave out a half-truth as Irina looked at him with suspicion. She could tell that Issei was lying since she knew him so well. Irina kept glaring to get Issei to spit out the truth. Her attempts were successful as Issei felt discomfort course through him. This was new. Normally, she wouldn't have resorted to using a glare to make him intimidated, but what she did next kinda bothered and scared Issei a little. Irina materialized a club of light and aimed it at Issei's head. "Wah!" Issei exclaimed in alarm. "I also heard that you tried to assault Zenobia and that she was crying. Is that true?" She spoke ominously, with Issei looking at her in alarm. Her voice was irritated and even angry. Wait. It was a misunderstanding. I was chasing Issei and he left Zenovia's room and then she walked in from the showers and her towel fell off and she got embarrassed and she started crying and then Asia, Rias and Akeno came up to the room and they thought that I tried to assault her, but I didn't and Drake can't tell the whole story." Issei ranted in quick desperation. Light was dangerous and poisonous to devils, so getting hit with a club of light was not something he could allow. Light hurt like heck. She knew he was a pervert, but even Issei had his decency. Deciding to trust his confession, Irina put the subject aside as the bell for the end of lunch rang throughout the school campus. The evening soon came. Irina had received a call from Michael through a magic circle, telling her and every other angel in existence to return to heaven for a short amount of time. Of course, Michael had already told the other leaders of the three factions about what he was going to do, and with much time and argument from others, Michael was allowed to make today's events happen. Judging from Michael's cheerful tone, something good must have been happening. She went to heaven and immediately returned to see heaven as it was being repaired from the attack that Kuoh had mounted on it. She passed through the gates of heaven and traveled down the white stone path and went to the first heaven. Michael had granted everyone special permission to come to the first heaven so that he could show everyone the surprise that he found. After all angels had assembled in the first heaven, they were amazed to see a large white room with a radiant throne of white, with numerous magic circles everywhere, with two large bundles of magic circles in the middle of the room. One was the sacred gear system and the other was the system that Michael had become the center of. Michael appeared in a golden flash of light and appeared over everyone so that he could be heard by everyone. Everyone, I have discovered something of great importance. While searching into the system that our father had created and left behind, I found something that I believe was left behind for us. I think I found the solution to our shortage of angels. Michael happily declared as several gasps of surprise and shock echoed throughout heaven. Michael raised his hand with patient grace and continued speaking. He materialized a white box with golden markings. The box gave off unbelievable radiance and it pulsed with strong holy energy. It had power that was of unsurmountable class. My brothers and sisters, remember, keep your faith strong and your hearts pure, for this shall test us all. Michael warned everyone as he opened the box. The box had let out blinding light and it had spread throughout the whole world and all of its planes of existence. When the light died down, the box evaporated into white mist. Everyone looked around and felt that something within them had changed. Something was free. Michael saw everyone's surprised reactions and began to elaborate. I found a recorded message from our father. The box that I opened was a box that was meant to be a parting gift to us. It will allow us to love and live more freely. We can now create and repopulate our people now, like how humans, devils, and fallen angels can. We can now no longer fall from mere thoughts. However, deeds of extremely lustful debauchery, mass and unjust murder, and other sinful acts will still make us all. Still, we can now let our people prosper once more. The birth and raising of angels will be at the same rate as that of fallen angels. My brethren, I am happy to say that we are free to love now, openly. That is all that I wanted to do and say. You may return to what you were previously doing. Michael spoke with happy and cheerful attitude as he left in a flash of light. Behind Irina, Michael appeared and decided that he'd clear her doubts. Hello Irina. He calmly spoke. Irina turned around and bowed in respect and reverence. Michael-sama. Is it true? Irina looked at him with hopeful eyes. Michael merely smiled radiantly. You can now freely love Issei-sen now. You can advance your relationship however you want. I still encourage you not to go too far though. Shameless acts of debauchery will not be so easily looked over by the system. Show some restraint when you try something. Michael warned Irina with gentle advice and soon left to meet with Surziches and Azazel. Irina wanted to scream like someone whose dream just came true. She could now freely pursue Issei with no strings attached and less restraint involved. Angels could even breed now without falling or using any rituals. It was a dream come true. Still, the angels could still fall if they went too far with their desires and deeds. She decided that she wanted to share the good news and returned to the Hayabu residence that evening to share the news with Rias' peerage. She teleported back to the Hayabu residence's basement and made her way to the living room. Everyone had gathered for dinner, excluding Mr. and Mrs. Hayabu and the boys from the ORC. Kiba was still with Tosca, Gasper was helping Valerie with rehabilitation, and Issei was out taking care of client requests. This made things work out for her. If Issei were here, Irina would have been too shy and scared to say anything about what just happened. When dinner was cleared away, Irina made her announcement. Her vigor had remained with her, but it instantly left when she was about to talk about Issei. "Be everyone," she muttered with a low voice. At first no one heard her, so she had to speak again. "Everyone," she said a bit more loudly as everyone's attention was grabbed by her louder call. "There's something that I wanted to tell all of you." Irina spoke with a low and bashful tone. Everyone looked at her with calm curiosity and waited for her to sum up the courage to talk. Today, Michael-sama made a discovery concerning the angels. Everyone's curiosity had grown when Michael got mentioned, but nobody interrupted her. Michael-sama found a magical box left behind by the Holy Father, and Michael-sama said it was a parting gift and solution to the angels' low numbers. The gift inside the box was a light that let all angels pursue love and desire freely within less strict moral boundaries. We, angels, can breed like regular devils, fallen angels, and humans now. Everyone's jaw dropped at this revelation. The one strict and upright race of the three great factions was now able to mingle and love freely now. This was a truly surprising revelation. "So, does this mean what I think it means?" Rias asked her calmly with a knowing tone. This was happening all too commonly now. "Yes, now that this has happened, I'm going to actively pursue Issei-kun romantically from now on," she bashfully declared. Everyone recognized how much of a rival she could be and agreed to take the challenge head-on. Even though Issei and Rias were officially a couple, it was no secret that Issei had made his harem already. The girls were still competing for his attention. When Issei returned from his contract work, he seemed tired beyond reason. He wanted to get to bed, but his stomach was raging for him to eat something so that he wouldn't suffer at school tomorrow. Warming up his food, he took a bite and immediately smiled from the deliciousness. "This is Ria's cooking, alright. I can tell how the spices are added in different amounts, and I can sense the emotion put into this. Issei gratefully engorged himself with his beloved girlfriend's food as the void in his stomach was filled and his appetite restored and sated. He ventured upstairs and showered and changed into a shirt and shorts and climbed into his bed. He expected Rias and Asia to be waiting in bed for him, but he had found that all of the girls, even Zenobia, who was ranting about shameless behavior to him in the past, was awaiting him in bed. Issei found that he wasn't going to get into his bed since there was barely any space for him. Suddenly, Irina stirred and opened her eyes to see Issei. She sat up from her position on the bed and smiled shyly at him. "We welcome home, Issei-kun." She stared nervously at him. Every time she looked at him now, her heart would beat faster and would start racing when romance became involved. "Yeah. I'm back." Issei returned her welcome warmly. "Looks like everybody took up space on the bed tonight." Irina inspected around her and found no open space for him to creep into, except for next to her of course. She was at the farthest side of the bed and saw that she had room at the edge of the mattress. She didn't want to sleep somewhere else where Issei wasn't and she wanted to use this chance to try and get closer to him as well. Ever since Christmas, after the incident of Heaven's attack, Irina was much more daring in her attempts at his affections and she didn't worry about falling as much anymore. She even stuck on the special doorknob that her father gave her so that she could lure him into the room that was put in a different dimension. Now, she would look away in a mad blush and she wouldn't even look him in the eye. In truth, Irina had a dozen simulations of how she would try to get closer to Issei so that he would notice her feelings and take an active response to them. She scooted to the side and patted the empty spot next to her, signaling for him to come and lie down next to her. Seeing that he might as well just do it, Issei walked over to her and lied down next to her. This was his bed after all, so he might as well sleep in it. To his right, Zenobia, and to his left was Irina, who so kindly moved over for him to sleep next to her. "I don't have to restrain myself anymore," she told herself. "Partner, it seems like this girl wasn't as drastically to the same degree as the other girls. She seems shy compared to normal, but there's something else. Something hidden." Drake informed him mentally. Issei took his information seriously, but then he felt Irina's arm pull her close to him. She rested her head on his chest and snuggled up to him. "Issei," Irina whispered seductively to him in an erotic voice. Her cute and stimulating voice sent chills up Issei's spine. "Now, we've come to it. Is she Tsundeer? Yandeer? Which is it?" Issei steeled his nerves and prepared for the worst. "Issei. I'm cold, can you hold me? The other girls took the blankets and I didn't bring one." Irina weakly moaned as she rubbed her shoulders to warm herself up. It seemed reasonable since it was winter and there were no blankets for the both of them. The extra ones had all been taken by the other girls. Seeing as how Issei's body was that of a dragon's now, he was far more resistant to the cold. Using the situation to her advantage, Irina was going to try and use her charm to get intimate with Issei. It wasn't fair that he only paid special attention to Rias only. The other girls felt that way too. Huh? Issei was alarmed by her daring direct request. Irina looked up at him and gave him puppy dog eyes. "Please." She pleaded with the most desperate expression she could make. Irina decided that she would catch up in the race for his attention. Choosing to oblige her and his perverted tendencies winning him over, Issei wrapped his left arm over her shoulder, albeit a bit hesitantly, and allowed it to rest there. Irina breathed a comfortable sigh and scooted into his arms even more. Yes, step 1 complete. Irina made a victorious look and proceeded to go to sleep, knowing she'd need rest for tomorrow. The next morning, Issei began to struggle for air as he awoke from his peaceful slumber. Muffled complaints and struggles tried to escape from him, but his cries fell on deaf ears. Thankfully, his physical movement brought attention to him. "Ah. Sorry, Issei-kun," apologized a familiar voice. Air flooded into Issei's lungs as he gasped. An embarrassed Irina removed her torso from Issei's face. "It's fine," Issei muttered out. This comment was going to be his undoing, however. "Ooh oh? So you like this?" Irina rested herself on his torso and brought her face closer to Issei's, with mere inches being the distance between them. "Irina?" Issei was curious as to why she was being so flirtatious. She brought her face close to Issei's ear. "What is it, Issei-kun?" Irina spoke slowly in a sensual and arousing voice. The air of her breath tickled Issei's ear and caused to blush a little. "She's acting like Rias and Akeno-san. She's turned into a temptress," Issei exclaimed mentally. His words seemed panicked, but he was actually enjoying the moment. "Hahaha." Issei made a perverted chuckle, but he felt two auras sizzle and crackle as he turned to his right and saw Akeno's and Asia's auras erupting. "Issei, you dummy. People are trying to sleep." Asia scolded Issei as a golden dragon-shaped aura sprouted around her. "Stupid Issei, you could have done this with me." Asia pouted in her mind. Issei-kun. Flirting with another woman. Flirting with an angel, no less. Being taken. Akeno muttered with broken speech and a hurt glare. Issei began to panic as his watch turned red and 3 of its hands glowed green and pointed at Irina, Akeno, and Asia. Why wait? I haven't even done anything yet. Issei sat up and backed up to the edge of the bed, a safe position for him if he needed to run. Yet. The 3 girls said at the same time, with Asia being accusational, Akeno being despairing, and Irina being seductively suggestive. All of the other girls woke up due to the commotion and were staring at the spectacle in front of them. What happened? Rias, Rossweisse, Kaneko, Zenobia and Kaneko looked up to 2 raging women, 1 flirtatious angel, and a panicking red dragon emperor. Issei-kun. Rossweisse rushed to protect Issei as she prepared for the worst. Okay. That's enough. Ria's voice echoed in the room as she calmed everyone down with her strict tone. You should all already know that something like this would happen frequently, so stop raising a fit so that the underclassmen can get ready for school. Rias glared at anyone to challenge her authority to start a fight. Her mother's words about taking charge of the harem had rung in her head as she decided to show some confidence in being the legal wife and maintain order. Complying with Rias, all of the high school students went their own ways to get ready for school. Irina looked back at Issei and winked at him as she blew a kiss at him. Issei made a goofy grin but was set back on course by Akeno glaring at him and Irina. At school, with lunch beginning, it was only Irina and Issei left again. They were eating lunch on the school roof and Irina happened to be feeding Issei. Here, Irina cutely brought a meatball to Issei's mouth. Complying with her, he opened his mouth and ate the meatball, savoring it. It was a little spicy, but it had plenty of flavor from soy sauce, salt, and had bits of green onion and ginger inside it. How is it? Irina asked with a worrying gaze. It's good. Issei gave his honest opinion. Irina immediately broke into a smile and giggled. Thank God. I was hoping it was good. I actually thought that I did a bad job. She was relieved as the fruits of her labor proved to be uplifting. Issei gave her a shocked expression. This delicious food and savory soup that she had brought for the both of them were made by her. The last time he tried her cooking, he had spent a few hours on the toilet with diarrhea tearing his insides up. Yes. Irina gave him a proud look. She was aware that her cooking was terrible, so she spent an unbelievable amount of time learning how to cook from Issei's mother and the other girls. Now, she was getting closer to Asia's level of cooking. Hey, Issei, since I fed you, can you feed me? Irina gave Issei puppy dog eyes and made a desiring expression. Issei blushed a little when he noticed that how cute and pretty she looked. From her beautiful hair, her faithful and kind eyes, to her beautiful figure. He couldn't help but blush when he picked up on her many positive traits. You sure? Issei hesitated, to which Irina responded by nodding enthusiastically. Picking up some fried shrimp tempura, he carefully placed it in Irina's mouth. Irina let out a delighted sound as she chewed and swallowed her food. She was delighted that her cooking had impressed Issei, but she was truly delighted when she just did something a lover would do with his or her partner. But the bento's over and done with, there was still plenty of free time for the lunch period. Irina took this chance to make Issei sleep on her lap. She wanted to do so many things with him and now she would do things slowly at a memorable pace. How does it feel? Irina brightly beamed down at him. If she weren't already one, Issei would call her an angel. It's awesome. I'm in bliss. Issei closed his eyes and smiled as he rested himself due to the pure comfort and relaxation he was in. Suddenly, he sensed something touching his chest and saw Irina trailing her hand around his torso. Irina, what are you doing? Issei knew where this was going. Why, I'm only trying some skinship. She deviously smiled at him. She moved her hands further and further down his body, towards his nether regions, before Issei grabbed her hand and sat up. Irina, aren't you afraid of falling? Issei asked her with a very serious expression. Irina merely shook her head and decided that the time was now to tell him what had happened. Issei-kun. There's something I should tell you. Irina then began her story. After the tale was over, Issei was in pure and utter shock. So angels can't fall from lust and desires anymore? Issei was flabbergasted. Irina merely shook her head. Yes, we can fall from excessive lust. Things like merely offering yourself to random others out of pure lustful desire with no love will still make you fall. Other deeds like cruel murder and massacre will still make us fall. Irina answered all of his questions. Irina turned away a little at the end. I wanted to wait until I had made significant progress with you and then I would tell you. I wanted to prove that even without the Holy Father leaving his last gift to us behind, I was willing to do anything for you. I was willing to make lustful attempts at you and I wanted to prove my feelings to you. I don't want to be childhood friends anymore. I want to be a lover to you. I know that being your only lover isn't possible, but I want to be one for you. I want to be loved by you too. Irina declared to him with emotional eyes and nervousness and anxiety jumping around in her heart and mind. Issei merely smiled, but Irina wasn't done. I was so insecure about my place. I would get called a self-proclaiming childhood friend and it made me realize that I didn't know you anymore. When the girls started to get closer to you, I saw that I couldn't get closer to you and show you how I felt because if I wasn't careful I'd fall. Irina began to shake a little and tear up. Issei wondered what would have happened if the personality ray had taken full effect on her. He guessed that the ray only made her more daring, seductive and insecure. He grabbed Irina by the shoulders and hugged her. I think that I always knew how strongly you felt for me after Christmas. That night, when you kissed me, I completely understood how you felt for me. I want you to know that I respond. Irina tightened the squeeze as she looked at Issei with tender and warm eyes. Issei-kun. Irina moaned before she kissed Issei full on the lips. This made the third time that they kissed. The kiss was like bliss to the both of them. It was passionate yet romantic and lust wasn't protruding its nose in the act. At first, Issei was surprised, but he now responded with strong emotion for her. Irina. I want you to know that I still want to be a harem king. But, I want you to know that I love you too, along with the other girls. Issei still held on to his original dream, an unsurprising thing, really. I know. I'll still love you, regardless, Issei-kun. She spoke before the school bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. The two got up and walked back to their next class as they would pick up on things later. Irina now held full confidence over the fact that Issei now understood her feelings and her place in his heart had been solidified. When school was over and done with, everyone headed home. Walking through the door, Irina happily ventured to her room as her mood seemed to radiate pure light. This was no joke either. Her halo had formed over her head and she literally radiated light from her body. It was most likely the mood she was in that made her this way. Ravel had walked downstairs to meet Issei, but noticed that Rossweisse was already on him. Can I take your things? She offered lovingly, as Issei assured her that he could do it. Grrr. I want to spend some time with Issei too. Ravel's aura flared as she planned to create a chance to spend some time with Issei. Alone. Little did Issei know, and much to his forgetful memory, his watch immediately activated and one of its hands lit up green and pointed right at Ravel. Issei was walking to school and as he traveled his daily route, he recalled the conversation that he had with Azazel the previous night. After he came home from school, Azazel had come to visit Issei, having found more research on the personality ray's effects. So, Irina's personality wasn't out there like the others, huh? Azazel was trying to form a reason about why the personality ray didn't affect her like it did the others. It looks like the ray merely released some of her inner restraints and allowed her to display a more daring and flirtatious attitude. I also heard about Michael's discovery and I think that played a part in it. You might want to watch out. She might be even more daring from this point onwards. Issei yawned as he stretched in his chair. He had a sleepless night since Akeno-san had started to have yandere tendencies again. She wouldn't stop cuddling him and whispering loving comments to him while stating that he belonged to her. It was quite a tense atmosphere. Issei shuddered at the thought of her yandere tendencies escalating to a real yandere point. He'd be butchered if Akeno turned into a true yandere. He remembered the story of how Akeno became lifeless and detached from reality when he died. He realized that the personality ray must have amplified her mental dependency on him to the point of near obsession at certain points. Pushing the thought of his mind as the teacher entered the classroom, Issei decided to think on this matter later at some other time. Class was boring. Motohama and Mitsuda were back in the hospital. Apparently, they tried peeping again and tried to make indecent moves on girls at some sort of club that they snuck into. The bouncers caught them and they tried to put up a fight but got beat around like punching bags when they made things worse for themselves. Suddenly, the door to the classroom opened and a familiar girl walked inside. Her hair was blonde and arranged twin-tailed dreads. Her height was around Asia and Kaneko's height. Her blue eyes reflected her calm personality, but a fire was hidden inside them as well. She was wearing Kuoh's uniform and was apparently a second year. The girl was none other Ravel Phoenix, daughter of the Phoenix clan and Issei's manager. She looked around the classroom, looking for Issei and spotted him by his window seat. As she moved toward him, several guys and girls looked at her. Issei noticed her moving towards him and as he looked at her, he noticed his watch activate. His watch hand activated and turned green, pointing itself at Ravel. Issei-sama. She greeted him as she sat in the desk in front of his. For some reason, her tone was a bit cold and detached. Her gaze was stern and serious, and a professional aura was about her. Ravel, what's up? Issei was very tense. His watch reacted and its hands turned green and immediately pointed at Ravel. Now then, what will she be? Dear? Yandere? Sundere? Hey, wait, she's already at Sundere. Issei noticed his mistake and forgot that Ravel was already somewhat of a tsundere, albeit minus the stereotypical violent tendencies. You have a regular school day today from 8 am to 3:30 pm. Toju Kaneko-san has an hour of time with you after school at 3:30 pm to 4:30 pm. Asia Argento-san has requested that you spend an hour with her at exactly 5 pm to 6 pm. Rossweisse-san will be with you at 7 o'clock till after dinner time. Himejima Akeno-san will be spending the rest of the evening with you. Rias Gremory-sama will be away on business this evening. Please memorize today's schedule. It is vital that you get used to this sort of thing if you wish to be a harem king. Ravel's flat and monotone voice was very new to Issei. He expected this tone to come from Kaneko, but it came from Ravel instead. Ravel, is that all? Issei asked hesitantly, he was trying his best to be careful with how he approached her. Ravel turned around and gave him a cold professional look. In her eyes were calculations and robotic organizations going on. Yes. She replied curtly. Issei froze in place as his cute junior manager gave him the cold shoulder. She turned around and walked away, without a second glance. Issei was a bit down in the dumps as he let out a long sigh. He was sitting in the ORC Clubroom, with Kaneko on his lap, munching away cutely on her snacks, while filing through several requests from several clients. Ravel had made him sit down and sort through the several requests that had come to him. He had some that were about Nyotan requesting for him to bring him and friend, somebody to transform her into a magical girl. There was another where he was supposed to help organize an intervention for a pervert. Issei was sure that he'd be the one who'd be forced to be a target for the intervention. The number of requests went on, and after sorting everything, he turned in the files to Ravel so that she could sort out his schedule. Whenever he tried to get closer to her, she would brush him off and get back to work, while telling him to get to work also. He missed that tsundere Ravel who would bake cakes for him and would shyly talk to him with her cute and hesitant blush. The new Ravel was even more efficient and tactical, but Issei wasn't sure he liked the mechanical mindset of her new personality. Azazel said that he couldn't really do much at this point since he didn't want things to mess up even further. However, there was something else that Azazel withheld from Issei. He wanted Issei to go through this and understand that being a harem king wouldn't be so easy. He'd have to deal with all types of girls, and he would have to be able to sort out his troubles when it came his harem. After spending an afternoon of snacks and games, Issei and Kaneko went home, where he would have to put up with tsundere Asia. Issei. Bring me tea. Asia was hollering from the living room as she was reading a book. Issei was a bit exhausted from the numerous deeds that she made him do. She made him buy her a limited time cake from the local bakery. She made him massage her shoulders, and she even made him scrub her back for her in the bath. Asia's chest has grown even more. She'll get closer to Akeno-san's figure at this rate. Issei noted happily to himself as he walked to his room. He decided to kill some time and decided that he'd play some games with Office, who was merely dilly-dallying around the mansion. He didn't get much time with her since the other girls were taking up huge portions of his time. Hey Office. Doing okay? Issei patted her head as he sat down and grabbed a controller to play with her. Yes. I am doing fine. Office replied in her usual monotone voice. Issei merely smiled and spent a whole hour playing with her. It felt nice to be able to go at his own pace for a change. He didn't have to obey any orders, take requests, and get cuddled when he was with Office. He merely hoped that Office didn't pick up on any of the girl's new tendencies. When he looked at the time, it was 6:50. It was time for him to go and meet with Rossweisse. He ventured downstairs to the kitchen and saw her humming happily as she cooked dinner. Issei noted to himself that her cooking rivaled the two great one he saw in Asia. He walked next to her and lightly poked her sides. She yelped and turned around with a stunned look and blushed when she saw how close Issei was to her face. Issei-kun. She was flustered when her lips nearly touched his. Sorry. I couldn't resist. Issei made an apologetic look when she turned around with a maddened red face. Rossweisse turned around and continued cooking. It's fine, Issei-kun. I'm glad that you felt that way. What do you want for dinner? I can cook whatever you want. Rossweisse sweetly inquired. Issei thought for a moment and answered. I'm fine with anything that you cook, Rossweisse. Issei was truly okay with whatever she came up with. Rossweisse nodded in recognition and continued what she was doing. Issei was sure that she would make the perfect housewife, and it excited him, knowing that she had feelings for him. After dinner, Issei retired to his room, but he was caught by the stairs by Akeno. She giggled happily as she snaked her arm around his and walked with him up the stairs. She was wearing her shrine maiden robe, so Issei expected something erotic to come along. It's high school DxD. I think what's coming next won't be too surprising. Partner, be careful with how you tread now. One false word and you'll be beheaded with jealous love. Drake gave wise counsel as Issei took heed, but also felt confusion. He looked at his watch, and the hands were glowing green and were pointing at Akeno. Issei's watch was still white, so it meant he was still safe. He was sure that if he mentioned the other girls, he was dead meat. Her yandere tendencies were growing stronger, so he had to be much more careful. He thanked the Mayu that Akeno was still reasonable. If the other girls initiated contact, she didn't go yandere, but if Issei himself initiated eki situations, he'd be in serious danger. Issei had changed into a white shirt and shorts and was lying in bed with an unclothed Akeno, sleeping under the sheets with him, with her arms around him. There were clearly no signs of her letting go of him either. Issei-kun. Looks like I get you all to myself tonight too. I'm so happy. She nuzzled into his chest as she smiled happily. Me too. Issei was being honest with this particular comment. He enjoyed being with Akeno, so he didn't mind her at current time. Within short time, the pair fell asleep, with Rias arriving home later that night. Issei woke up the next morning and found himself alone with Rias and Akeno, both undressed and under the sheets with him. A normal sight these days. He got out of bed, washed his face, brushed his teeth, and changed and proceeded to head downstairs, hoping to find breakfast. He had picked up some cooking from his mom when he asked to learn a little, in case situations came to bad outcomes, like the girls not being home to cook or them being too mad at him for some unforeseen reason. He found that Ravel was already cooking breakfast with her new cool and calm look. She was making pancakes, the same ones that she had made for him during the training with Riser. Issei smiled and felt gratitude for her hard work. He continued downstairs and sat down at the dining room, patiently waiting for her to be ready to serve breakfast. Within an hour, she had made several dozens of pancakes, with there being easily enough to feed everyone in the mansion. Issei noticed that she had been working non-stop with cold determination ever since the whole personality Ray fiasco started. She didn't spend much time with him and was constantly sorting out his schedule, replying to messages, organizing his business affairs, and managing his money from Oppai Dragon. She clearly looked okay, but Issei decided that he needed her to relax before she burned out in due time. Issei-sama, everyone, breakfast is ready. Ravel called out from the kitchen as she came out with several plates of pancakes and dispensers for syrup. With one bite, Issei felt awake and energized as he savored the sweet buttery pancakes. While savoring the sweet pancakes, Issei was trying to think of how to get Ravel to relax for the day. He had taken Kaneko to the amusement park. He took Asia clothes shopping and to the arcade. He went with Zenobia to the bookstore and then to a burger restaurant. He didn't really go anywhere with Irina, but he knew he'd have to go somewhere with her too. Finally, he remembered the winter medieval festival that was coming to Kuoh. As soon as he recalled it, he knew it would be a good place for her to relax. It was rumored to be full of European medieval stuff, and it was said to be a fun place, like a Renaissance festival. The festival was supposed to start at 9 AM today. It was exactly 8 AM today, so there was time to get to the festival before crowds started gathering around the tickets. When the other girls had all left the room, Issei took this chance to ask Ravel out. Subconsciously, this whole personality Ray had been making Issei more confident and less of an open pervert. A good sign since he didn't try to strip any beautiful girl in battle and he didn't voice his lewd thoughts out loud anymore. Ravel. Issei walked up to her and gripped both of her shoulders gently. Ravel, for a moment, looked surprised but quickly regained her composure. What is it, Issei-sama? Ravel asked with her icy tone. Go out with me today. Issei knew he was being blunt, but he wouldn't let her say no. She deserved a break, with all of her hard work. I'm sorry Issei. Ravel was about to decline, but Issei wasn't taking no for an answer. Ravel, you're my manager, right? Ravel merely nodded. Isn't it the manager's job to help take care of the person that they are helping? Ravel nodded again. Then, for me and my health, go out with me today. Issei adamantly pressed on. He wasn't sure he liked this new Ravel. He liked how this new her was even more efficient than before, but she lacked the emotion that the real her had. Ravel paused for a while and nodded, agreeing to his demands. Alright. Go and change into warm attire, and then we'll leave. Issei felt joy and relief as Ravel walked up the stairs to do as told. I have to say, you handled that well, partner. You didn't let her refuse and you even got her to agree without arguing. You're improving. All of my past hosts had harems, of course, so I'm not too surprised with your approach. Drake was now certain that Rainer's curse was gone. The old hesitant Issei was reformed into a stronger Issei. Issei changed into a black coat with a red scarf and black jeans. When Ravel came downstairs, she was wearing a red coat with a gold scarf, white skirt, and black boots. There was a decent amount of snow outside, so boots were a good idea. Still, with one being a dragon and the other a phoenix, the cold wasn't much of an issue. Shall we go? Issei extended a hand, which Ravel took it nonchalantly, though this was a facade to mask her blush. Hopping onto the station and darting to another area of Kuoh, the pair arrived to a forest area in Kuoh. They had walked from the station all the way to the woods where the festival was to happen. They saw rows of torches lighting a path to a gate. The gate had a post put there with a person inside, ready to pass out tickets. The fee was 2,000 yen, a fee that Issei easily paid for, to Ravel's protest. Issei-sama, a small fee like that could be easily paid by me, who is of high class. Please spend your fines more wisely. Ravel gave Issei a lecture about money, a lecture which he didn't pay much attention to. However, thank you. Ravel added in the last note with a small blush. Any time, Ravel. Issei smiled at her, causing her heart to go pitter-patter. They passed through the gates and were greeted by a unique sight. There were several medieval booths and shops that sold accessories, jewelry, paintings, cosplay items, and different Western foods. There were people dressed up in suits of armor, dresses, and clothing that was supposed to be from Britain's old days. Ravel's attention was caught by a poster that showed a play that was to start in a couple of minutes. The poster talked about a knight in shining armor, saving a princess that was being captured by an evil warlord and his evil henchmen. Issei saw her eyeing the poster and took her hand and led her to the theater that was set up for the festival. They took their seats, and Issei managed to get them high-class seats where they had the best view for the play. As the curtain rose, Issei saw Ravel's eyes light up. It was clear that she wasn't as icy as she had seemed. Issei just needed to melt the ice around her with certain things that struck her fancy. Ravel was thoroughly enjoying the play as it unfolded. A young princess was going to marry a man that she knew since birth, but he soon died before they could marry. The man had gone off to war and promised to return, but didn't, and news of his death had reached the princess, who swore off marriage out of faith to her departed beloved. This brought a sense of disappointment to her until the next part of the play came. The princess would refuse anyone who came for her hand in marriage as days went by. Soon, attempt after attempt, the princess was about to be forced into a marriage with death threats launched against her parents and her people. On the day of the dreaded ceremony, the evil groom-to-be and his army were defeated by a single hero in shining armor, who did so, single-handedly. When the armored hero took off his helm, it was none other than the man she had fallen in love with. The man who was said to have died in battle was standing in front of her, ready to marry her after saving her. The play ended on a happy note as the princess and her hero were finally able to keep their promise, and they lived happily as king and queen. When the play ended, everyone rose from their seats and clapped vigorously, including Ravel. Issei was happy that she enjoyed herself, as he could sense the thin layer of ice around her heart being thawed out. They left the theater, and Issei was eager to return her to her old self. He decided that he was going to include her in his peerage when he became a high-class devil, and would strive to do so that he could make the women around him happy, and so he could protect them. Ravel, how about we go there? Issei pointed at an archery range. Ravel wasn't exactly sure about it, but agreed. They each stood in a different range and listened to the instructor and the rules before finally beginning the game. Issei wasn't such a bad shot since he hit 6 target out of 12, but Ravel was something else. She shot all 12 targets and won herself a stuffed dragon plushie as a prize. Next was knife throwing, which Issei was freaking out over. He had been chosen as a volunteer from the crowd since he couldn't let Ravel do it. "That young miss, how about you volunteer for the knife throw?" bellowed the show performer. Issei had immediately darted in for her own safety. "I'll do it instead. I've been wanting to volunteer," Issei declared with bravado. In truth, he was freaking out since he didn't exactly trust the performers and he was being spun on a wheel at an alarming speed. "I've got a bad feeling about this." Issei felt his dread increase with each step he took up the stairs. "Be strong, partner. If anything, I'll change parts of your body so that you won't feel any pain. I can't exactly change you into a dragon in front of all of these people though." Drake did his best to soothe Issei, but it didn't help much. "I don't want anything sticking itself into any part of me. Especially if it's a weapon." At last, Issei was strapped onto the wheel and was spun around at a nausea speed. "Oh my god." Issei's words weren't even comprehensible since the wheel was so fast. When he saw Ravel giggling a little, Issei felt that this was worth it and ignored any further complaints that his mind and body made. Finally, the knife thrower aimed his 5 knives and threw them one at a time. "I will not fear," Issei said to himself as one knife embedded itself next to his left cheek. "I will not fear." The second knife impaled the spot close to his right cheek. "I shall not fear." The third knife hit a spot that was very close to his left armpit. He could feel the cold metal close to his skin. A bad sign. "I cannot fear." Issei was starting to panic as the fourth knife barely missed his right arm. At long last, the last knife came. When Issei saw where the knife thrower was aiming, he was sweating buckets. There was a gold star directly under his crotch, and judging by the growing danger that the knife thrower was presenting him, Issei was sure that the knife would definitely connect with his groin. "I must fear." Not there. Issei had lost all reason and was now officially freaking out. He shuddered as he tried to regain composure. The fifth knife came and barely missed his manhood. The knife had begun to drop a little and barely hit the golden star. Thank you, gravity. Issei gave his sincere gratitude to the force. Thank you, brave volunteer. If you wish to show your bravery again, come here once more and show your courage. Ta-ta. The performer loudly declared as Issei walked off the stage. When he walked over to Ravel, she was giggling to herself. She couldn't help it when she saw Issei's expressions. Issei was a bit disturbed at how she enjoyed watching his torment but let it slide when he saw her smiling and laughing. Let's go somewhere else. Issei suggested, to which Ravel agreed. Yes. Issei-sama. Ravel replied with a slightly more cheerful look. They walked and their eye was caught by a high striker contest. Ravel caught sight of a charm necklace that was a prize and actually wanted to win it, but she didn't have much faith in her physical strength. She relied more on tactics and her inherent abilities. Seeing her longing, Issei walked forward and took hold of the hammer and proceeded to slam the hammer onto the scale, sending the puck flying into the bell, causing it to ring and echo all over the festival grounds. Well, we have a winner, choose a prize. The employee gestured to the booth next to him, which was chock full of prizes like games, toys, stuffed animals, jewelry, and other cool items like replica weapons and cosplay items from the medieval period. Pointing directly at the necklace that Ravel was eyeing, the employee placed it in a black and gold case and handed it to Issei, who proceeded to give the case to Ravel. The necklace was heart-shaped and had a ruby gem placed into it. The locket and chains were all gold and there were strange markings on it. Magical it seemed. She gave him a look of confusion, but Issei merely nodded at her, signaling that he won the prize for her and not himself. Ravel was blushing graciously as she gingerly took it. Thank you, Issei-sama. Ravel's tone had changed once again, this time, her tone had returned to being normal. Issei looked at his watch and saw that the hands were still glowing green, with one of the hands pointing at Ravel. Partner, I think her personality is changing again. It seems like she's become like that former Valkyrie. Drake sensed a magical change in her and decided to warn his host. Got it, Drake. Issei felt a bit relieved since she was now no longer cold like before. She used to give him the cold shoulder ever since her personality changed. Today, I've had so much fun today. Thank you. This encourages me to work even harder now. Ravel beamed a bright smile at Issei with a charming blush on her cute face. Looking at his watch, which could also tell time, Issei saw that it was 4 p.m. Ravel, how about we get something to eat? Issei suggested as he was sure that she was hungry too. His stomach felt like an empty pit which demanded for nourishment or hell would be raised. Of course, Issei-sama. Ravel wrapped her arms around Issei's left arm and walked with him to a booth that was selling food. After they finished eating, Ravel pointed at a store that was selling clothes and cosplay armor. Issei-sama, could we go there? Ravel looked at Issei, who nodded excitedly. They walked inside and Ravel took a gander at the huge selection of dresses, robes, and armors for women, while Issei browsed around the men's clothing. Feel free to try on anything you like. The store owner welcomed them in as she pointed out several outfits in the store. Ravel saw a red ballroom dress that looked quite amazing. She proceeded to try it on in the changing rooms and was anxious to see how Issei would react. Issei saw a suit of shining armor and decided to try it on for fun. The two changed into their chosen outfits and came out of the changing rooms to get the other's opinion. When Issei saw her in the red dress, he was astounded by how much more beautiful and mature she looked than before. He always thought she was cute, but now she was utterly beautiful. Issei thought on how hard she worked and how much commitment that she showed him. He thought about how hardworking she was and how intelligent she was. She was also very good at baking, and she may seem arrogant, but she was actually very sweet. Issei realized that when he looked at her now, his heart would speed up like when he was with Rias and Asia. Could I be falling in love with her? Issei didn't expect seeing this coming. It was understandable to have fallen for the other girls, but he didn't expect to have also fallen for Ravel. Ravel opened the box with a necklace inside of it and put it in Issei's hands. Issei-sama, could you help me put this on? Ravel turned around as Issei nodded, obliging her request. After placing the necklace on her neck and locking the back of it, Ravel turned around and gave him a hesitant look. How do I look now? Even more beautiful than before. Not that you needed the necklace though. Ravel's face lit up red and she made a silent thank you. I think you look very dashing in that armor too, Issei-sama. Suddenly, the necklace made a strange glow, with red light glowing everywhere. What's happening? Ravel was alarmed by the sudden event, but the light of the necklace soon died down and the magic symbols on it disappeared. Partner, something's not right. Get ready because I smell trouble. Drake warned Issei, who put his guard up. Issei looked around and several dozen men, who looked at Ravel, suddenly became entranced by her and dropped whatever it was they were doing and ran at her. Please marry me. Become my lover. You're mine. It's a goddess. Issei and Ravel became flabbergasted by this strange turn of events. Issei proceeded to punch and kick away any guy who dared try to assault her. When Issei was busy fighting away several crazed men, some others grabbed Ravel and were trying to run off with her. Issei noticed this and raced toward them. He didn't want to, but the situation demanded it. Issei summoned the boosted gear and flew after Ravel and her captors. The men who captured her looked like they were about to do nefarious things to her. Ravel's hands were held down, and she didn't want to exactly show her phoenix wings either. "Dragon Pulse," a voice called out. A red wave of energy blasted into the men who grabbed her, sending them all flying into trees and the ground, knocking all of them out. Seconds later, Issei dashed and jumped next to Ravel. "Are you okay? Did they do anything to you?" Issei was afraid at what could have happened. Ravel's clothes were all in perfect condition, though her hair was ruffled. When Ravel looked at him, her heart skipped several beats as she saw how heroic Issei looked. Defending her from several crazed men all by himself, Issei looked like the hero from the play that they watched earlier that day. She had been infatuated with tales of heroes in shining armor, and here, Issei was her hero in shining armor. She shook off her dazed love-struck emotions and replied. "I'm fine. We should go," Ravel suggested as Issei finished knocking out the last of the crazed men. "Yeah. Let me do something really quick first." Issei took out his phone and called Azazel. "Sensei. There's been an incident by the area where the Winter Medieval Festival is. Can you come and help clean up here?" Issei called in the favor where Azazel promised to help take care of cleaning up any fiascos that were caused by the personality ray. This time, Issei would blame it on the necklace that Issei had won. Within minutes, a team of Grigori members had transported to the area and began to wipe memories of recent events too before Ravel's necklace activated. Damage was fixed and bruises were healed after little time passed. Even Azazel showed up for this. "Hey, you two, what happened here?" He was amused at what happened and wanted to know more about what caused the whole situation. "Well, this necklace just started to glow red and everyone who looked at it attacked me." Ravel showed the necklace to Azazel, who looked at it closely. "Oh, this thing. This necklace has an entrancement spell on it. Whoever looks at it when it goes off becomes entranced by whoever wears it and they turn into love-struck idiots. It only works once though. This was usually used as a revenge thing, but they all got destroyed. The Helen and Troy incident happened because of this thing." Azazel made a hearty laugh as Issei and Ravel made exasperated sighs. "Well, it's powerless now and the spell is gone, so it's just normal jewelry now." Azazel put the necklace back into Ravel's hands as he and the other Grigori members left. With a deep breath, Issei decided that the pair should go home. "It's getting late. Ravel, let's go home before it gets too dark." Ravel and Issei agreed and changed back into normal clothes and proceeded to go to the train station and head back. As the two walked home, Issei decided to tackle a matter that had been badgering him for a long time. "Hey Ravel. I wanted to talk about something." Issei's tone was serious, making Ravel feel a bit on edge and even anxious. What is it, Issei-sama?" "About you being my manager." "Yes. I don't want you to be my temporary manager anymore." Ravel felt her world shatter as her ambition began to cave in. "What? Why?" she cried out as Issei turned around with a warm and kind look. Ravel looked panicked and even heartbroken. Her desire to be with Issei and her ambition to be with him. It was all falling apart. "What I meant to say was this. I want you to be my permanent manager." Ravel's ambition immediately repaired itself and she felt a strong blush grow on her face as her heart began to race like lightning. "When I become a high-class devil, will you become a part of my peerage? As a tactician?" Issei was a bit hesitant because it wasn't like he had much to offer, but he absolutely had to ask. This whole fiasco with the personality ray made him want to further his relationships with the women in his life. Ravel smiled a truly joyous look and had her hand over her heart in an effort to calm it. She leaped forward and placed a strong passionate kiss on Issei's lips. Ravel's agreement and dedication to Issei was all conveyed in this one kiss. "Yes, Issei-sama. I'll be your manager forever if you want me." Her voice was low and loving. Her gaze was warm and her emotions were all positive. Ravel couldn't feel much happier. Issei knew that this sounded much more than it meant and he didn't mind. He wanted to be a good harem king. Not a negligent one. Ravel and Issei parted and Ravel immediately wrapped her arms around Issei's arm and walked happily with him home. Being a harem king. My old impression of it was so naive. I used to just think of it as being a guy who had a bunch of busty beauties around me. All of them loving me and satisfying my desires. Now, I want to be a loving harem king. I want to love them and for them to love me. I want to protect them and live happily with them. I'll become stronger so that I can make this new dream come true." Issei swore an oath to himself with powerful determination. "Of course, partner. I'll also be with you every step of the way. Drake promised Issei as he made his support known. Issei thanked Drake. Now, he was eager. Eager to further his other relationships. Next, he would try to get even closer to Rossweisse, and he looked forward to it. Issei was having quite a pleasant dream. It was a few things short of heaven. Issei knew because he went there before. It started out with him in his bed in his room inside the Haidu mansion. It seemed as if he was sleeping within his dream, except he awoke inside of his dream to a very beautiful sight. He sat up in his bed and was surprised to see Rossweisse. The best thing was, in Issei's opinion, was that she was nude. It wasn't a rare sight for Issei, but it was still a sight to behold. Ah, the beautiful body of a former Valkyrie. A truly beautiful sight to behold. Issei was drooling a little as he saved her unclothed appearance into his neural hard drive with a new image of her in a different pose. Rossweisse was sleeping sideways, making her chest pressed together. Her curvaceous figure was outlined by the blanket draped over her lower half, and it was indeed an arousing sight. Rossweisse stirred and soon awoke as she sat up, yawned and stretched her arms into the air. This action completely exposed her voluptuous chest and was yet another pleasantry for Issei. Rossweisse smiled lovingly at Issei. Her face was red with a faint blush and her tone was a bit shy but also satisfied, or rather, she sounded content. "Good morning, Issei." Rossweisse moved forward and gave Issei a nice long kiss on the lips. It was warm and soft as the two felt each other's lips and tongues collide. The kiss turned lustful, with a warm passionate kiss becoming much more than a long peck. Finally, the two parted lips, with a thin trail of saliva connecting between the both of them. Last night was absolutely wonderful. Rossweisse's bashful face turned bright red as it seemed like the two had spent a very intimate night together. Issei felt as if he had hit a milestone. Even though it wasn't true. Yet. He smiled and was about to sweep in for another kiss until he felt a strange sensation. The dream turned to white and he opened his eyes to see the ceiling of the canopy for his bed. He sat up and found that Rossweisse, Akeno, Rias, and the other girls in his harem were asleep on his bed. All of them were in sleepwear and the sight was actually quite jovial in a strange sense. This looked to his left and Rossweisse laying close to him. Her sleeping face was absolutely peaceful and he couldn't help but feel his heart speed up a little when he looked at her tranquil expression. "You okay, partner?" Drake questioned him mentally. "Yeah. I'm fine, Drake." Issei replied mentally, though he sounded a bit out of it. Drake knew exactly what Issei was going through. He had seen his hosts go through this far too often. A harem was unavoidable for his hosts. "Partner, if you need a talk, I'm right here." Drake spoke his last piece before leaving Issei to his own privacy. Issei was stuck considering about what to do at this point. He had completely and undoubtedly captured the hearts of Asia, Kaneko, Zenobia, Irina, and Ravel at this point. It was clearly established that the 5 girls, plus Rias, were going to be with him from now on. He was very sure that Rossweisse and Akeno clearly had feelings for him and their new sides had solidified this belief. Still, he needed to make sure if they were willing to be in his harem. He was a bit more confident now and he still aimed to be a harem king, but he would be a more loving one. He was going to be a man who protected the women that he loved. He decided that he'd choose to go to Rossweisse first. She was Deridir right now, so she was probably bound to be more honest and less deceptive, unlike how Yandir would be. He decided that he'd go spend time with Akeno last. Best to leave the possible worst for last. He had dressed himself and brushed his teeth and hair and went downstairs. He smelled sweet scents and fragrances and continued down the stairs with expectant vigor. He sat at the dining room table and found that food was already laid out, with the other girls having gotten up and fixing their appearances after noticing Issei's absence. Plates of stacked waffles, Danish, crepes, and pancakes were placed along the center of the table in an elegant fashion. Seating himself at one side of the table, he found that Akeno had scooted next to him in a rather rapid fashion. "Wah? Akeno-san, how did you?" Issei was stunned because she had been sitting on the other side of the table between Irina and Zenobia, but now she was next to him within 3 seconds. Ifufufufu. No need to sweat the small stuff. Akeno's aura was a bit unsettling, but Issei paid no mind. He took his seat and as he placed himself on the cushion of his chair, Rossweisse walked out from the kitchen area. She was wearing a simple white t-shirt that showed her desirable torso and a dark blue skirt that reached her knees. Her hair was tied into a ponytail with the usual ribbon that she used for her hair. Wow. That's actually a nice new look for her. Issei was at first stunned and then entranced by her. The smallest change in hairstyle for Rossweisse made Issei's heart go on a race again. Rossweisse noticed his gaze and beamed a smile at him. Issei's face grew a little hotter as he paused. He snapped himself out of his daze and turned to the food. "I wanted to try and make something different today, so I hope you all are satisfied with this." Rossweisse felt hopeful that her food would taste good. The dishes were of Danish, Scandinavian, and Norwegian food. Everyone took a portion of food from each serving plate and tried each one. A sense of delight and satisfaction lit up in their minds as they savored breakfast. With breakfast out of the way, it was supposed to be a normal Saturday morning. However, that wasn't the case. The Vali team, which had been incorporated into DXD, had shown up. Apparently, they were taking a break for a little while. For the past couple of weeks, Vali would show up randomly and watch adult videos with Issei. Azazel had told Vali that if he tried to copy Issei, Vali might unlock a new power. A power that would be received through perverted means. Seeing as how Auden had taken in Vali as his adoptive son, Auden wasted no time in teasing Vali about his fetishes. A couple of days ago, the two showed up for a friendly visit so that Auden could formally introduce and announce Vali as his adopted son. Well, Seker Yuite, it has been a while. Auden had announced his arrival a few hours before teleporting to the Haidu residence. Ah, it's good to see you again, Auden-sama. Issei decided that he should be more formal with Auden, since he wasn't just any old perverted geezer. It's good to know that you've gained some respect for me. Well, I thought it would be good manners to take my new son around and formally introduce him and make certain things clear. You all already know this, so words aren't really needed. Still, I think Vali needs to learn how to relax and learn that there's more to life than fighting. I'm hoping that you can teach him that. Azazel boy has done much to foster his strength but didn't effectively deal with his battle mania. I'll leave Vali here for the day so that he can unwind. I've already restricted him from running away, but feel free to punch my son if he gets out of hand. Now then, I'll leave you two here. Oh, the Vali team is also here, so do get along better from now on. The DXD team will depend on the ties of you youngsters. Hahaha. I'll see you later. Chichiryuite. Ketsuryuku. Auden made a hearty chuckle as he left. Vali looked a bit uncomfortable, but that was a given. The boy didn't have a very bright childhood. His mother was dead from an early age, and his father bullied him out of his home due to his meddlesome and evil grandfather, Rizavum Lucifer. Not to mention, Auden said Vali seemed to have a butt fetish. A direct opposition to Issei's breast fetish. Issei felt a little pity for his past and decided that he should indeed try to help him out. Deep down, Vali wasn't really such a bad person. He was just obsessed with fighting strong people. Hi do Issei, I've paid some attention to those adult videos that you lent me, but I've found no powers increasing in me. Vali stated bluntly. The matter of perversion was completely lost on him. I knew it. I don't know what Azazel-sensei was thinking, but having him watch adult DVDs isn't something that would necessarily give him a strength boost. Issei breathed an exasperated sigh. Where were you looking? Issei decided that he'd try to help him along in awakening his worldly desires. I paid attention to the hip and under. Around the buttock area. Vali's statement was blunt and monotone. A clear sign of disinterest. Gotta think of something else. I don't know why Sensei and Auden are pushing me to help this guy out. Issei was going through ideas of what to go over in his head. He couldn't go into the topic of battle. Vali would just get caught up in it and start thinking about fighting again. Issei spent an hour trying to get Vali to think deeply about perverted things. A feat that was impossible for Vali since he wasn't interested in such things. Issei decided to drop the subject. He needed to move on to other things. The next topic. Video games. The money he was getting from his Op-I Dragon funds and some of his contracts were ridiculous. He would be swimming in yen, but Grafia made sure to only give him a sufficient amount of money that wouldn't corrupt him. With his newfound wealth, he had bought several new game consoles, and he made sure to use all of them to try and convince Vali that there was more to life than battle. He spent a few hours playing a long list of video games with him, and Vali actually seemed to be interested in RPGs. Leveling up and gaining new and stronger equipment flipped a switch in him. Moving on to manga and novels, Vali wasn't too interested. Sports was a good alternative though. It was active and it caught Vali's attention. They played basketball, and Vali seemed to be able to dunk with a 85% chance of it going in. Over time, Issei noticed that Vali would smile a little more as he became more used to different forms of entertainment. He noticed that the other members of the Vali team were actually beginning to get along with Rias' peerage too. Given their history, Kaneko and Kuroka were actually spending time together. Of course, Kuroka and Lefei were living at the residence, but they weren't too active in the house. The two sisters would share meals and even play together, though they would play games in Issei's room since he was console central. Arthur was chatting with Yudo and Zenobia. The topic was about swordplay and swords themselves. The sword was what the three shared in common, and it was a great focal point in strengthening their ties. Iku's comedic and carefree attitude mixed well with Irina's bright and friendly personality. Laughs and jokes were exchanged, and it was obvious that in Team DXD, the two would be great help in diffusing tension. Lefei was happy to reunite with the Vali team, and she would join conversations with her brother and Biku, since it had been a little while since they last saw each other. Say, Vali. Have you ever had a large group of women romantically interested in you before? Issei decided to go back to the subject of romance and finding a family to settle down with. Love was important for life. Everyone needed it at some point. When I was at Grigori, I did have a number of fallen angel females follow me around. Vali sounded a bit pained, even hesitant when he spoke about this. Did they vary in personality? Yes. Very. Vali was wondering where Issei was going with this, but followed his lead. Have you ever heard of the deer types? Vali paused before answering. Yes. Azazel had introduced the matter to him. He understood that the deer types were people of differing personalities and that they shared in common the focus of love and affection. It was a popular trend in anime. What types did you deal with? Issei pressed on with the matter. Tsundere girls and deer girls, mostly. Vali was being passive until the next part came. What about yanderes? Issei eyed the basketball that Vali was dribbling as the two had continued playing. Vali froze as horrific memories returned to him. Flashbacks of hollow and lifeless eyes appeared in his mind as women of varying looks and beauty would try to claim him for themselves through psychotic and murderous means. Ah. Vali wheezed out. Now. Issei snatched the ball from Vali as he brought it to the hoop and dunked it, winning him 5 wins out of 10. Vali stood frozen as horrors from his past returned. Vali had never been in a relationship before, but stories from Azazel and his own experiences would just give him chills. This was a rare sight to see though. A scared and frozen Vali. This completely contracted with the calm and collected aura that he usually had. Want to talk about it? Issei had come to the conclusion that by getting things off his chest, Vali might loosen up and enjoy life a bit more. Issei walked over to a bench and patted the seat next to him. Vali sat down and began conversing about his terrible encounter in the past. How scary was it? Terrifying beyond reality. I was around 14 years of age. Back when I was in Grigori, there was this fallen angel girl. She was about my age in fallen angel years. She had been stalking me ever since I was taken in by Azazel. Apparently, she believed we were soulmates the moment she looked me in the eyes. She was convinced that we were supposed to be together and thus, she resolved to stalk me and try to obtain my affections. For years, she stalked me and threatened every girl that tried to get close to me. Eventually, I caught her trail and confronted her. What came next was terrifying. She had attacked and severely wounded several women who tried to get closer to me. When I expressed disinterest, she immediately erupted. We were in her room at the time and I saw that her room was covered in photos of me at different times and places. She even took things that I touched and used. She had stolen a pair of clothes from me. Picked up a strand of my hair and even took a piece of food that I didn't finish. Eventually, she attacked me and tied me down to a bed. At the time, I was tired from training and from using Juggernaut Drive. She subdued me with unnatural power and then told me about things she did for me. Vali spoke those last few words with a shudder. Issei was seriously wondering if Akeno had done those kinds of things too. He had to pay her room a visit later. She had beat up people who badmouthed me and even proceeded to badly wound them. She snuck 50 love letters to me daily and she even cooked all of my food without me knowing. Eventually, I escaped and reported the situation to Azazel. He managed to sort out the situation. Still, those lifeless and hollow eyes of a yandere. Truly scary indeed. The emptiness, obsession, dependence, and horror. It took a while to shake it off. How weak I was back then. I never knew that yanderes were so capable of amazing feats from their obsession. I even had to fight desperately for my chastity. Vali breathed a long sigh as he recounted his traumatizing past. Issei sympathized with him. At the current moment, he had a girl who would go back and forth from being deer and yandere. Eventually, dinner came that night. After a hearty meal, Auden had arrived. It was like watching a father pick up his son and friends from some place. Thanks for today. It was fun. I think I found some things that are a bit more interesting than I originally thought. Vali admitted as he smiled back at everyone in the Haidu mansion. When Rossweisse saw Auden, however, she went cold. Auden-sama. What brings you here? Rossweisse glared at him, sending chills up the old man's spine. Her tone remained polite, but her expression was anything but that. You just here to pick up my son and his friends? Auden stated nervously. An intense and angry aura erupted around Rossweisse as Auden quickly left with Vali, Biku, and Arthur. When Auden left, Rossweisse's aura calmed down and she went back to being Deradir. Arifufufufu. Looks like Rossweisse has quite a scary side. Akeno teased lightly as Rossweisse merely huffed away. Issei had decided to take a bath later that evening in order to wash off the sweat that he had accumulated from the day. While showering, he heard the door open to reveal Rossweisse, draped in nothing but a towel with her hair in a bun. Issei was a bit surprised by this sudden action in all honesty. Issei, let me wash your back. Rossweisse sweetly sat behind him as Issei silently complied. She grabbed a towel with soap and proceeded to scrub his bare back. The feeling was pleasant and relaxing, according to Issei. All done. Rossweisse proclaimed as she washed Issei off. With cleaning himself being over, Issei walked over to the hot spring in the room and sank slowly into it. He knew that Rossweisse was watching him, so he thankfully put on a towel to cover Issei Jr. However, Rossweisse, who was blushing crimson red, was still washing herself off so she couldn't see him enter the spring anyways. He should have been used to this by now, but Issei couldn't help but feel a little timid. It was probably because of being in the same room with a well-endowed silver-haired beauty. When Rossweisse entered the water, she deliberately got in right next to him. Issei felt her smooth white skin brush against him, sending a slight tingle through him. "Issei, is the water to your liking? If it isn't, I can have it changed," Rossweisse tenderly asked him as she pushed up against him. "If Rias are firm, Akeno's are soft, then Rossweisse's are bouncy." Issei shamelessly gave his mental critique of Rossweisse's breasts. "I have never been so ashamed as a rider. But it's high school DxD. Is something the matter, Issei?" Rossweisse's face inched closer, bringing their lips mere inches apart. "Are you feeling alert? Do you feel dizzy? Your face is red." Rossweisse kindly put her hand on his forehead to see if his temperature was abnormal for the situation. "My face is red for a different reason." Issei could not only see her breasts, but he could see below her waist too. The last time he got this conscious in a bath was with Rias. "I'm fine, Rose." Issei assured her that he was feeling fine. Rossweisse looked relieved and proceeded to put her head on Issei's shoulder. "I'm glad. I love you, Issei. Even if you love the other girls, I love you unconditionally," Rossweisse proudly proclaimed to him. Issei looked at his wrist where his watch was. The watch was a gift from Azazel. It could exactly tell if someone around him was behaving under the effects of the personality ray. The watch was not glowing at all. This meant only one thing. Rossweisse is being truthful. She's saying it of her own free will. Issei was surprised by this revelation. Rossweisse was in love with him. Rossweisse contently rested herself on him, creating a silent atmosphere. Issei came to the conclusion that he also loved her. For the past few days, Rossweisse cooked for him and helped him whatever endeavor that he did. Even when he went out to fulfill a contract, she would stay up till he came home and would make sure that he had a warm meal and relaxing bath. It was touching, really. There was no point in withholding the statement any longer. "Rose, I love you too," Issei calmly replied to her. Rossweisse's eyes shot open as she looked at him with a surprised look. Do you mean that?" Rossweisse looked at him in disbelief. It was a gamble on her part. She knew that Issei had eyes for Rias and he was also a perverted teen, so it was hard to tell if there was love or lust. Issei looked at her with a determined and honest expression. "I'm just as serious as when I declared my love for Rias." Issei confirmed the truth behind his words. Happy tears were brought to Rossweisse's eyes as she lunged forward and brought Issei into a tender and strong embrace. The pair brought their faces together and intertwined their lips. It was passionate, tender, and was untouched by lust. "Her lips are so soft and warm. This feeling, I like it. I've kissed with Rias so many times already, and yet, it feels different every time I do it with Akeno and the other girls. Am I really okay with leaving the other girls hanging?" Issei began to question himself about dating. Was he content with just dating Rias and leaving the other girls unrequited? He couldn't take too long to come to a decision. It wouldn't be fair. He had to think things over carefully. He loved all of the girls in his harem, but he didn't want to deprive them of attention either. Deciding to exit the bath before things got hectic, Issei parted ways with Rossweisse and went to his room to rest for tomorrow. The next morning, at breakfast, Issei was alone with Rossweisse. The others had things to do so they were all out of the house. Deciding to cook breakfast for once, Issei decided that he'd make breakfast. The menu was fried smoked sausage, buttered toast, waffles, and soup. "Issei, Rossweisse held up a piece of sausage to his mouth. Issei gladly obliged as he opened wide. The whole time, the two were being lovey-dovey, as if they were a newlywed couple. It seemed as if Rossweisse had taken the lead in romance in the harem, second to Rias, of course. When breakfast was done, Issei decided that he'd take Rossweisse out shopping. Rossweisse was obsessed with 100 yen shops and other low-price places. Issei decided that he'd take her to expensive places so that she could enjoy luxury for once. Apparently, her hometown didn't have much either. "Rose, do you mind going out with me today? There's some stuff I want to do, but I was wondering if you wanted to go out with me too." Issei masked his intentions with a convincing lie. He also played on Rossweisse's derriere side. "Of course, just let me go change first. I'll be back soon." Rossweisse ran upstairs and came back down a few minutes later in a white coat, black pants, and white boots. They were all designer clothes too. It was obvious that Rossweisse felt quite strongly about this. It was basically a date after all. The two had taken a train from the station and were currently shopping at a brand store. He decided to go the men's section and pick a few clothes so that Rossweisse wouldn't suspect that he was up to something. He grabbed a few shirts and pants and walked over to Rossweisse, who was looking around at a couple of clothes. She had already tried on a few outfits and Issei was stunned at how pretty she looked. She had tried on a blue shirt with a light-colored jacket and a black skirt. The skirt reached mid-thigh. She also tried an outfit where she was in a red shirt and white skirt. I wonder if Issei will like this. The whole time, Rossweisse asked herself this while trying on outfits. She walked out to a mirror and was surprised to see Issei standing next to one. Ah. Rossweisse was a bit bashful since Issei caught her looking a bit more girly than usual. You look really nice. Issei beamed a smile that made Rossweisse shake with joy. She was currently wearing a silver loose shoulder shirt and a black skirt with silver shoes. Thank you. Rossweisse stammered as she gazed into the mirror next to Issei. That one comment made Rossweisse's heart skip a beat and caused her face to redden into a blush. She checked herself and she did think that she looked okay, contrary to Issei, who thought that she was gorgeous. Opting to take the 3 previous outfits, the two headed up to the register to pay, with Issei being first. After scanning all of his items, Issei handed the cashier his debit card. Use this to pay for her items and mines, please. Issei slickly gestured for Rossweisse to scan her items. Rossweisse was a bit surprised that Issei would do that. She was going to argue until Issei cut her off. Don't worry about it. You've done a lot for the past few days, so this isn't really much. Go ahead. Scan your stuff. Issei kindly moved aside for her. With payment done and clothes bought, the pair ventured off to other things. Issei was a bit glad this time. He and Rossweisse could go on a date and not get interrupted, unlike the last time. Last time, Euclid decided to come crash the atmosphere with his obsessive tendencies toward his sister, Graphiolucifuge. The pair had gone to the aquarium that was close by. They saw numerous types of fish that were separated into different tanks, depending on whether the marine life was a predator or not. They saw octopi, great white sharks, flounders, clownfish, and even electric eels. Rossweisse would point at several fish and tell Issei to look at them when she caught sight of an obscene fish. The whole time, Issei was happy to see her enjoy herself. When he looked at her joyful smile and carefree movement, he rejoiced. He felt the same way every time he saw any of the other girls that he liked smile. Still, there was an issue left. The whole time, Rossweisse would cling to him. While they were at the aquarium, Rossweisse stayed around him the whole time and would keep her arm entangled around his. He didn't mind at first, but he felt like she was dissolving the lines of privacy and personal space. She wouldn't stay more than 1 feet away from him and was always in physical contact. The most bothering thing came when she would wait outside of the bathroom for him and even offered to help him wash his hands. Issei had no idea why she was doing that, but he felt like he needed to do something. He could tell whether or not Rossweisse was progressing towards yandier tendencies. He watched an anime and got advice from Azazel about the topic. The clingier a girl gets and the more in love she falls, the closer she'll get to becoming obsessive and eventually psychotic. Hunger soon arrived and the pair had gone to a famous street vendor that was apparently a famous chef that cooked for the masses. The vendor had a large tent and cart that was red and white. Multiple containers and pots of food were laid out on kerosene heaters and a large menu was posted at the counter. There were multiple employees who were working in the kitchen area of the tent. There were a bunch of different foods like mitarashi dango, sandwiches, shawarma and pies. After ordering their food, the two ventured to a park bench and ate their food there. In a nutshell, the date was clingy but sweet. Rossweisse stuck to Issei the whole time and she didn't even bother to leave his side as time went on. The two were eating peacefully and were staring at the sunset. The yellow gold sun was beginning to go down and stars and moons were beginning to materialize into the sky. It was a beautiful sight. Rossweisse turned to look at Issei and noticed a stain of food on his lips. She took a napkin and gently wiped it. She noticed a stray strand of hair on Issei's face and brushed it aside. She even began to pat down some of the wrinkles in Issei's clothes. For the past few days, she had done this routine. Slowly, she felt that a strange new impulse was taking hold of her. She wanted Issei for herself. She said she was willing to share him with the other girls, but she now felt like rescinding on that. Issei noticed the look on her face and realized that something was wrong. She looked conflicted and even sinister. I want to be the only one. Rossweisse muttered. Huh? Issei looked at her and then his watch. His watch was blurring a red light and the hands were glowing green, with one hand pointing at Rossweisse. Even the band turned red. One of the new features for the watch was that it would start blinking whenever a girl's personality started changing. It was color-coded too. Red yandir. Blue kudir. Green sundir. Yellow deridir. Shit. Issei cursed in his mind. Partner. You have to stop her now before it's too late. Drake warned Issei quickly. If I can't have Issei as my husband I'd rather die. Rossweisse declared darkly. These dark thoughts were erupting out of nowhere in her mind. Rossweisse. Stop it. Issei yelled loudly, causing her to snap out of her dark trance, scaring her even. In Issei's eyes, he saw anger and desperation. This made her tear up a little as her fragile mind shook a bit from his sudden outburst. "Blah," she stuttered. "Don't you dare talk about dying again. We've gone through this before. The last time you talked about death, I told you that I'd protect you. If you try to hurt yourself, I'll protect you from hurting yourself." Issei repeated his promise to her once more, causing Rossweisse to realize the nature of what she had just said. "Even if other people insult you, I'll be here to counter them. Even if you look down on yourself and deem yourself unworthy of life, I'll be a reason to help you value yourself. Never talk about killing yourself and don't you dare belittle your life again." Issei had recalled back to the times where he nearly lost Asia permanently twice. The first time when Rainer tore her sacred gear away from her and when Shalba nearly killed her. He also thought back to the times when Rias was gravely wounded by Regulus during the match with Sererg. He also remembered the severe losses in that match and the anger he felt at watching all of them fall in front of him. He didn't want to hear any more about his friends and loved ones dying. Rossweisse realized the mistake she made by talking about dying again and began to tear up. She was touched by Issei's outburst and declaration. She never dated before, so she had never felt romantic love before Issei. I'm sorry, Issei. I don't know what's happening to me." Rossweisse stammered as she began to sob. She was confused and disoriented. Just where did those suicidal thoughts come from? Issei moved over to her and brought her into a tight and warm hug, bringing ease to Rossweisse as her sobs began to die down over time. "I'm sorry for yelling at you. I didn't mean to be so loud. Still, never talk about killing yourself again. You and everyone at home and all of our friends are precious to me. I don't want you all to get hurt and I want to love and protect you and the other girls." Issei patted and rubbed her back to calm down Rossweisse's cries. "I know, Issei-kun. I promise. I'll never talk about killing myself again." Rossweisse wrapped her arms around Issei as if he were her lifeline. The two parted a little and Issei looked her right in the eyes. He saw disorientation and confusion, but she also saw love and light. He saw the tears in her eyes and wiped them away softly from her cheeks. Rossweisse couldn't restrain herself any longer. She rushed forward and crashed her lips against Issei's softly. Tender passion, relief and love were transmitted into the kiss. Unlike the other kisses, this one was warmer and much stronger in emotion. Time felt like it stood still with eternity taking the place of passing time. Eventually, the two parted lips and stared lovingly into each other's eyes. Smiles were exchanged and even small laughs were expressed, with no words necessary, for they weren't enough to describe the happiness and relief in the air. There was relief for Issei, who was glad that Rossweisse didn't descend into destruction, and there was happiness for Rossweisse, who had her feelings completely reciprocated, even if the love she received was shared. The two silently walked home, with Rossweisse's head resting on Issei's shoulder the whole way. When the two arrived home, it was obvious that Issei had advanced the relationship between him and Rossweisse. The others, who had already arrived home, were surprised by what they saw. More competition. The other girls sighed but accepted the event. However, it seemed like there was a certain person who wasn't happy with the sudden occurrence. Akeno stared blankly at Issei, who was smiling brightly as he laughed jovially. "He's getting even farther away from me. No. I can't let this continue." Akeno began to panic mentally as she felt a powerful pain in her heart. Things weren't going to be quiet much longer. That is, it wasn't going to be silent for Issei and Akeno, who was at a breaking point. End of the here. So that's it for today's video, guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.